The war had ended, but peace did not feel like victory. Commander Darius Vane stood on the balcony of the Terran embassy, staring out at the crowd below. It was the celebration of the peace treaty between the Terran coalition and the mighty Valari Empire. Banners flew, diplomats smiled, and cameras flashed. But Darius didn't smile. He had fought in that war for 7 long years. He had seen planets burn. He had lost friends, comrades, and almost his own life. Now peace had come, but at a strange price. Today the Valari were giving him a gift. So they called it a symbol of trust. In truth, it was a quiet insult. Dressed in ceremony, her name was Princess Kelith Valari, daughter of the fallen Valari Emperor, and known across the stars as the Barren Rose. The Valari believed Kelith could never bear children. In their culture, that made her unworthy of the throne. She had been cast aside royalty in name only, used now to seal a peace deal, and she was being given to a human to him. When the shuttle landed, everything became silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. Darius walked forward, flanked by soldiers and officials. The shuttle's ramp lowered with a hiss of air. She stepped out slowly, wearing a long silver robe that shimmered in the sun. She moved with the grace of someone born to rule, even though her crown was long gone. Her skin was a smooth, pale lavender. Her long black hair was tied in an intricate braid. Her eyes were not cold, but tired, quiet, and watchful. She looked at Darius with calm interest. "You are Commander Vane," she said, her voice soft but clear. "And you must be Princess Kelith," Darius replied, offering a respectful nod. "Welcome to Earth." She gave a small bow in return. "I'm no longer a princess," she said, "but thank you." There was no smile, no warmth, just quiet civility between 2 strangers from 2 enemy worlds. The next few weeks were difficult. Kelith was moved into a secured estate outside New Geneva, Earth's capital. Though she was not a prisoner, she had little freedom. The press called her the alien bride. People stared. Some whispered. Some were angry. Many were curious. She did not complain. She took walks in the garden. She read books from the human library. She never cried. She never raised her voice. She never asked for more than what was given. Darius visited her often, but always as a host, not a husband. He had never agreed to marry her. The arrangement was political. He made sure she knew he would not force anything. "I didn't ask for this," he told her one day, bringing her tea. "Nor did I," she replied. That was the first time she almost smiled. One night a thunderstorm rolled across the sky. The wind howled. Rain pounded against the windows. Darius couldn't sleep. He asked. "I love them," she said softly. "On Valara, it never rains like this." He stood beside her, hands in his pockets. She spoke again, her voice quieter. "Do you know why they chose me, Commander?" Darius looked at her. "Because they thought giving you away would hurt you more than exile." She nodded once. "Yes." "And because they believed no child could come from me." A final insult. "A message that our royal line ends here." He didn't say anything at first. "I don't care what they believe," he said finally. "Not a gift. You're a person, and I'll treat you like one." Kelith turned to him then, truly seeing him for the first time. The storm lit her face in flashes of light and shadow. "You are not what I expected from a human," she said. He shrugged. "I'm not what most humans expect either." They stood in silence for a while, not as enemies, not yet as friends, but no longer strangers. Weeks passed. Slowly, Kelith began to open up. She helped the scientists translate old Valari texts. She shared ancient knowledge of medicine and technology. Human scholars began to respect her insight. Children who once stared at her now waved to her through the garden fence. And Darius, he listened. He didn't push her to talk, but when she did, he gave her his full attention. He told her about Earth's history, about war, pain, rebuilding. He told her about the forest where he grew up, about his mother's laugh, about the first time he flew a ship. Kelith listened to One Afternoon. She brought him a Valari flower she had grown in Earth soil. "It only blooms when it senses peace," she explained. It bloomed in his hand, but beyond Earth, dark things were stirring. Not all Valari accepted the peace. Some wanted revenge. Some wanted Keleth, dead before her presence could heal the rift between two peoples. Darius began receiving warnings. "Watch her closely," said an old general. "She may be the match that lights the fire again." But Darius didn't believe. He saw something in her that no one else did. And Keleth silent. Graceful had started to feel something in her heart too. For the first time in her life, she wondered what it meant to belong. Weeks passed like quiet ripples on a still pond. The war was over, but peace was not easy. Not for Earth, not for the Velarii. And especially not for Princess Keleth, once royalty, now simply. Present, she lived in a beautiful home surrounded by gardens and high-tech security walls. On the outside, it looked peaceful. But inside, she felt like a museum piece, a symbol, a forgotten soul placed on display. Her only true contact was Commander Darius Vana, the soldier who had been given her name and her future without asking for either. One morning, Keleth sat in the sunroom, reading a book of Terran poetry. Translator's screen beside her helped turn the strange human symbols into soft words she could understand. Home is not a place, but a feeling. She paused at that line, then read it again. And again, it stirred something inside her, something small and fragile. That evening, Darius returned from the capital. His uniform was dusty, his eyes tired. But when he walked through the door and saw her, he gave a simple nod. "You're still awake. I don't sleep much," she replied. "Your planet is loud. The wind speaks a different language." He smiled faintly. "Yet Earth talks too." "Much." She tilted her head. "You talk less than most humans. I fight better than I speak." She closed her book and looked at him with curious eyes. "And what are you fighting now?" Darius sighed and sat across from her. "Politics. People who think peace is weakness. Some say I'm being fooled, that you're spying for the Velarii." Keleth blinked slowly. "I am not. I know." Silence grew between them again. Not cold silence, just waiting. A few days later, Darius invited her to walk through the public city gardens at night. She hesitated, but agreed. Under the dim streetlights, they moved quietly side by side. Humans stared. Some whispered. A child pointed at her strange purple skin and glowing silver eyes. But the mother gently pulled him away. "Does it bother you?" Darius asked. "The looks?" "No, I am used to being different. I meant the silence between us." Keleth thought about it. "No, I prefer silence over false words." He gave her a look, both surprised and amused. "That makes two of us." As they walked near a fountain, a street musician played a soft song on an old Terran violin. Keleth paused. "That sound," she said, her voice almost breathless. "It's warm." "It's called music," Darius said. "Humans use it to say things they can't speak." She nodded. "I think I understand." The next morning, Keleth collapsed in the garden. Guards rushed to her side. Medical drones flew in. Darius was alerted within seconds and ran down the hallway like a man chasing a fire. When he reached her, she was pale, sweating, and barely conscious. "She's overheating," the medic said. "Pulse is unstable. Something's wrong with her." "Internal systems." Darius gritted his teeth. "Then fix it. Now." She was rushed into a medical pod. Monitors beeped. Scientists and doctors whispered. It wasn't just stress. It wasn't poison. It wasn't anything they could explain until one of the nurses gasped at the screen. "There's another heartbeat." "What do you mean?" "She's pregnant." No one believed it at first. Keleth had been declared barren by the finest Velarii geneticists. Her biology wasn't supposed to allow reproduction, not with her kind. Certainly not with a human. But the scans didn't lie. A small life was growing inside her, a hybrid, half human, half Velarii. Impossible, and yet real. When she woke, Keleth saw Darius sitting beside her. His eyes held the same calm strength, but something was different. "You saved me," she said weakly. "You scared me," he replied. She blinked. "I do not understand." "You're pregnant," he said, the words coming out slowly. Keleth froze. "That is, Not possible. Darius pointed at the screen. Tell that to your child. Tears welled in her eyes. She did not speak. Her lips trembled, and for the first time since arriving on Earth, she cried. But they were not tears of fear. They were tears of life. The news spread fast. Even though it was supposed to be a secret, within days, spies from both sides caught word. The Valerie High Council was thrown into chaos. Some claimed it was a trick. Others saw it as a prophecy. The Terran government panicked. Some politicians demanded that the child be tested. Some wanted Keleth returned to her homeworld immediately. Others saw the child as hope, a living bridge between two worlds. Darius received messages day and night. One of them stood out. This changes everything. She was not barren. She was chosen. Protect them. Keleth sat in the sun again, a hand resting on her stomach. She was still quiet, still calm. But something had changed. She was no longer just a gift, no longer a symbol. She was a mother now. Darius stood nearby, talking to the doctors. He hadn't left her side since the news. His role had changed too. He's no longer a soldier guarding a treaty, but a man guarding a future. When he walked over, she looked up at him. I did not know I could feel this way, she said. Neither did I, he admitted. What happens now? She asked. Darius looked toward the sky. Now, we make sure that child survives, no matter what it takes. Keleth stood at the window, one hand resting gently on her stomach. The sky above Earth was cloudy, painted in shades of blue and gray. Somewhere beyond that sky, her people, the Valerie, watched in silence. Some wanted her dead. Some feared her child. Others called it a miracle. She closed her eyes and listened to her heart. And the small, quiet beat inside her. She was no longer just a broken princess. She was a mother now. Commander Darius Vane sat in a security room, watching holoscreens. The estate was now under heavy protection. Human soldiers guarded every gate. Surveillance drones hovered near the trees. Nobody could get in or out without being seen. The child inside Keleth had changed everything. Some humans viewed it as a threat. What if it wasn't normal? What if it had powers neither race could? Understand? Others called it a symbol of peace, a new beginning after years of war. But Darius didn't think about politics. He thought about Keleth, about the way she placed her. Hand on her belly like it was something precious, about the strength in her. Eyes every time someone doubted her, about the night she almost smiled. That afternoon, Keleth met with the human doctors. A young female medic showed her a glowing scan of the baby. It's growing fast, the medic explained. Half human, half Valerie. It's stronger than we expected, healthier too. Keleth looked at the image in silence. It looked so small, so fragile. Yet its heartbeat was strong. Will it be like me? She asked softly. The medic smiled. It will be like both of you, but it will be new. Something this galaxy has never seen. Keleth nodded. Then I must protect it. That night, Darius brought her tea. He didn't wear his armor anymore. It's just a simple jacket and tired eyes. You need to see this, he said. He placed a tablet on the table. Keleth looked at it. A news broadcast showed protests. On both Earth and Valerie colonies, angry people, afraid people. Some Valerie shouted, "She is no longer one of us. The child is unclean." Some humans said, "Keep that alien spawn away." From our planet, Keleth watched without blinking. This child, she whispered, is bringing out the worst in both sides. Darius nodded. That's why I want to take you somewhere safe. Her eyes turned to him. Where? Hesitated. Off-world. A small Terran outpost near the old neutral zone. No politics. No cameras. Just peace. You'll be protected. Keleth looked down at her stomach. No, she said. Darius raised an eyebrow. No. I must return to Valara. He stepped back. That's too dangerous. They tried to kill you once already. I know, she said calmly. But if my child is to live in both worlds, it must be born in both worlds. She stood now, tall and quiet like a mountain under moonlight. If I run, the fear will grow. If I return, they will have to see me. They will have to see this child. Darius stared at her. You're serious? I am. He looked away, jaw clenched. You're going to get yourself killed. Then let them try, she replied, but I will not hide. After a long silence, Darius gave a slow nod. Then I'm going with you. The next week moved fast. A diplomatic ship was arranged. Only a small crew. No media, no escort. The mission was official but quiet. Kelith wore a royal cloak, silver and dark blue. Her hand never left her belly. Her calmness was not weakness. It was steel under silk. Darius wore a captain's uniform. His eyes scanned everything. Every hallway. Every shadow. He didn't trust anyone, not even their own pilot, as the ship entered Valar space. A message came through. You are not welcome here. Turn back or be destroyed. Darius looked at Kelith. She stepped forward and activated the visual feed. This is Kelith Valari, daughter of the High Bloodline, she said. I come not as a soldier or a traitor. I come as a mother. Let me speak. Silence followed. Then a reply. You may land. But you enter at your own risk. The capital city. Valara looked different than Kelith remembered. Cold, gray, heavy with tension. Her people watched from windows and rooftops. Some looked at her with shock, others with hatred. Some fell to their knees in quiet awe. Whispers filled the streets. The Barren princess returns. She carries a child. Is it true, Darius? Never left her side. His eyes scanned every corner. His hand rested near his sidearm. He didn't trust this welcome. They entered the old palace now, a political court filled with hollow faces. The Valerie Council sat high above, cloaked in white and gold. An elder speaker rose. You were cast out, he said. You were declared unworthy. Kelith stepped forward. Her voice was calm, but it echoed with power. I was cast aside because I could not give life, but now I carry the child of two peoples, not in shame, but in hope. Gasps spread through the chamber. Dare bring this creature into our world? One counselor shouted. Kelith placed her hand over her heart. This creature is the future of both our races. You fear what is different? But I have seen Earth. I have seen kindness. I have seen honor in a human. She looked back at Darius, and I have felt love. The chamber erupted. Some shouted, some wept, some left in silence, but the message had been spoken. The child was real. The future was now. Darius leaned close to her. They're going to come for us. Kelith nodded. Them come. And far beneath her skin, the child kicked for the first time. The palace lights dimmed as night fell over the city of Valara. Princess Kelith stood alone on the royal balcony, staring at the twin moons above. The same stars that once watched her exile now watched her return. She was not afraid, but deep. Inside her heart, she knew danger was close. Commander Darius Vane moved like a shadow through the halls of the palace. His fingers stayed close to his pulse blaster, hidden beneath his coat. He had served in too many wars to mistake peace for safety. He had seen the faces in the council chamber. Some were shocked, some were silent, but a few. A few had been full of hate. He didn't trust any of them, and he didn't need a war again. He just needed her and the child to survive. In the garden courtyard below, a soft chime rang out. Kelith turned toward the sound. It was the same wind bell that hung in her mother's room when she was a child. She touched her belly and whispered, Your grandmother once listened to this sound. She never saw peace, but maybe you will. Suddenly, she heard movement behind her. She turned slowly. A servant stood in the shadows. He looked calm, but Kelith's eyes narrowed. Her instincts had been sharpened in exile. You were not here before, she said softly. I served the court. Hi, lady, he replied. Her voice became cold. Which court? The man didn't answer. Instead, his arm moved, and a small knife shot forward from his sleeve, but before it reached Herderus was there. The blade hit his shoulder. He didn't flinch. In one move, he grabbed the attacker's arm, twisted it, and slammed him to the ground. Guards rushed in. Darius stood tall, blood on his jacket, eyes like steel. "No more mercy," he said. "This is a war of shadows now." The attacker refused to speak. No name, no rank. Just one sentence before he was taken away: the child must not be born. Sat at Darius's bedside as doctors treated his wound. It wasn't deep, but she looked shaken. "You took a blade." "For me," she whispered. "I've taken worse," he replied. "And I'd do it again." She held his hand. "I will not run." "I know," he said. She lowered her voice. "If I fall, promise me you'll protect our child." Darius looked her in the eyes. "You're not going to fall. Not now. Not ever."
You're stronger than they know."
She smiled softly, and for the first time it reached her eyes. The next day, Darius spoke with the Terran embassy via encrypted link. "They've already sent one assassin," he said. "There will be more." "Pull her out," the voice on the screen ordered. "It's too risky. She's not leaving." "Then you're on your own, Commander." He ended the call. He was used to being alone. Meanwhile, whispers spread through the Valerie streets. She survived the blade. The human guards her like a king. What if the child really is a sign? Some elders began to speak in private. Old prophecies, lost scrolls, stories of a royal line that would return not from purity but from union. Keleth heard the rumors. She didn't speak of them. But in her heart, a fire had been lit. That night, Darius and Keleth walked through the moonlit garden. She wore a soft robe, her hands resting gently over her child. "Back home," Darius said. "They think royalty means gold crowns and diamond rooms." Keleth smiled. Here it meant control, status, bloodline. Until now. He looked at her. "You're different?" "They know it. They fear it." "Good," he said. "Fear keeps cowards from pulling the trigger." She raised her eyes. "Do you think they'll come again?" "They always come again," he replied, "but we'll be ready." Keleth was ready too. She began meeting with the lower houses. Of the Valari people, the scholars, the healers, the builders, not the nobles who clung to old power, but the voices no one heard. She spoke not of politics, but of the child, of peace, of the future. Some wept when they saw her. Others swore loyalty not to the council but to her. One old woman placed a flower on Keleth's robes and said, "You are the storm after the drought." Darius watched all this in silence. He didn't need to lead. She was the symbol now. He was her sword. The palace council grew nervous. The whispers turned into meetings behind locked doors. "We cannot allow this child to live." One counselor said, "She is turning the people against us. They'll demand we name her heir. Then we must act." That night, as the twin moons rose high, a secret order was sent. Another team, trained, silent, deadly, but Darius had already prepared. Sensors lit up. Alarms stayed silent, but his watch buzzed. He rushed to Keleth's chamber just as the windows burst open. 3 figures in black armor leapt in. Darius fired. One fell. Keleth stepped back. Her hand on her belly, eyes calm, but sharp. The second attacker reached for her, but before he could, Keleth grabbed a metal vase and struck his head with surprising force. The third turned his blade toward her hand. Darius tackled him, slamming him through the glass door and onto the balcony. They fought in silence, fists, elbows, fire and fury. Finally, Darius held the man over the railing. "You made a mistake," growled. The man hissed. "You think one child will save your dying species?" "No," Darius said. "I think one child will save yours." And he let go. When the palace guards arrived, the fight was already over. Keleth stood. Unharmed, Darius, bruised but alive, stood beside her. The message was clear. They would not be broken. Not by fear. Not by blood. Not by old power. The dawn came cold over the Valerie capital. But inside the palace, the tension was even colder. The attack had failed, but its message was clear. Keleth was a threat. The child she carried, human and Valari, was the spark that could light the fire of revolution. The Royal Council had called for an emergency meeting. The elites gathered in their high chambers, dressed in gold and silver, their faces masked with power and fear. They could feel the winds of change sweeping through the palace. Keleth's return was shaking the very foundations of the Velarii. Empire Keleth sat alone in her chambers, gazing out the window at the city below. The streets had grown restless since the attack. Riots had broken out in the lower districts, protests for her and the child. Some called it a miracle, others, a disaster. She placed a hand over her swollen belly, feeling the steady rhythm of her child's heartbeat. Her child? It was strange. She had spent years being told that she was nothing, that her bloodline had ended. Now, she was carrying life, a future, a legacy. It was a future that some didn't want her to have. Darius entered the room, his face grim. The council wants you to come to them. They're demanding answers. Keleth didn't turn to look at him. She already knew what was coming. They feared me, she said quietly. They fear what your child represents, Darius corrected. They don't want you to have the power to change their world. Keleth stood, her hand still on her stomach. I've never wanted power. You have it now, he said, his voice steady. They won't stop. They'll do anything to keep it from you. She looked up at him then, her eyes filled with quiet determination. Then I'll give them a reason to fear me. The grand hall of the council chamber was filled with tension. Keleth and Darius walked side by side, their steps firm and united. The counselors watched them with a mixture of distrust and anger. An elder Velarii spoke first. You have returned, not as a daughter of the Empire, but as a traitor. You bring this child into our world, and you expect us to accept it? Stepped forward, her voice calm but strong. This child is the future of both our worlds. You can't stop it, no matter how much you fear it. Another counselor, a younger man, stood. The child will be a curse on our people. You were declared barren for a reason. Your bloodline is cursed. Keleth's eyes flashed, but she held her ground. My bloodline is no more cursed than any other. I may have been cast aside, but I carry life. You fear that because you cannot control it? But this is no longer about your old traditions. Darius stood behind her, his arms crossed. It's about the future. It's about a new beginning for both of us. The council gasped in disbelief, and whispers spread like wildfire across the room. Keleth raised her hand. I don't need your approval. I've come here to demand that you recognize this child as a rightful heir. He will unite our peoples whether you want it or not. The silence in the room was suffocating. Counselors exchanged wary looks. Unsure of how to respond, then a voice rang out from the back. Familiar face. The elder who had first spoken. You're not the heir? Oh, you never were. And this child will be nothing more than a weakling. The words struck Keleth like a physical blow, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she stepped forward. Then I will show you what strength looks like, she said, her voice unwavering. Outside, the streets of Alara were in chaos. Riots had grown more violent. The people who had once worshipped the old powers were now demanding change. The news of Keleth's challenge had spread like wildfire, and many saw her as a symbol of rebellion. Her message had been clear: no more hiding. She would fight for her child, for her people, and for the future. As the council continued to debate, Keleth's patience wore thin. She knew that nothing would change until she did something drastic. She could not wait any longer. I have done enough talking, Keleth declared. It is time for action. Before anyone could stop her, she turned and left the chamber, her hand still resting on her belly. Darius followed her, confusion in his eyes. Where are you going? He asked. To the heart of the city, she said, her voice low and determined. The people need to see me. They need to know that I am not just a princess. I am their future. The walk through the streets was long, and the crowd grew with each step. The people of Alara, once too afraid to speak out, now watched her with eyes full of hope. When Keleth reached the central square, she stopped. The crowd fell silent. She raised her hand, signaling for them to listen. I am not the ruler you wanted, she began, her voice loud and clear. But I am the ruler you need. This child will be born in both our worlds. No longer will we live in fear. Longer will we be divided. This is the dawn of something new. You will either stand with me, or you will stand against the future. Asterisk, asterisk, the crowd murmured, some with doubt, others with awe. Keleth stood tall, her belly swollen with the life that would change everything, as she turned to leave. Darius joined her side, his eyes scanning the crowd. He knew this was only the beginning. The future had already been set in motion, but the road ahead would be long and dangerous. The council would not give up so easily, and Keleth, she was ready to face whatever came next. The palace was silent, but outside, the world had erupted in the streets of Valara. There was chaos, protests, riots, angry voices demanding change, angry voices threatening war. Gleith's words had lit a fire that couldn't be put out. Child, the child that was to unite two worlds, was now more than a symbol. He was the spark. But inside the palace, where once there had been gold and luxury, now there was only fear. Keleth stood in her chamber, her hands resting on her belly. She was no longer a princess of the past. She was a mother, and soon she would give birth to the child that could change the galaxy. Darius Vane stood beside her, his hands clenched. His usual calm demeanor was now edged with the tension of waiting. He knew that once the child was born, the world would never be the same. He also knew that the council, the ones who had once ruled this world, would never accept it. They'll come, he said quietly. After the birth, Keleth nodded, her face unreadable. Then they'll see the power of life. Hours passed. The air in the chamber grew heavier, thick with expectation. Darius paced. He wasn't good at waiting, not for battles, not for anything. I'm not afraid of them, Keleth said suddenly, breaking the silence. I've been afraid of many things in my life, but not now, not for this child. Darius stopped, his eyes meeting hers. You're not alone in this. I know, she said. You've always been here, with me. By my side, he smiled slightly. I don't plan to leave you now. The time had come. It was midnight when the first cries rang out, a sharp, desperate sound, full of life and defiance. Keleth's breath caught in her chest. Her body ached, but she gritted her teeth and pushed through the pain. This was no ordinary birth. This was the birth of a new era. Darius was there, holding her hand, his gaze never leaving her face. He had been through countless battles, but this was different. He had never seen her like this before. Vulnerable, strong, determined, with a final, powerful cry. Keleth brought her child into the world. The baby was a tiny bundle, wrapped in soft blankets, but his eyes were wide open. The first thing Keleth saw was the strength in those eyes. It's the same strength that had kept her going all these years. The same strength that would carry the child into a new future. He's beautiful, Darius said, his voice hushed with awe. Keleth looked down at her son, the heir to two worlds. The child that could heal what had been broken, I'll protect. Him with my life, she whispered. Outside the palace, the streets were in full riot. The Valyri and Terran people were on the brink of war. News had already spread that the child had been born. Some called him a miracle. Others called him a curse. Keleth and Darius knew it was only a matter of time before the council would make its move. The rebellion was growing. The council would not rest until they had crushed this child, this hope. The next day, as Keleth sat holding her son, her heart raced. She could feel the weight of the galaxy pressing down on her. Darius entered the room, his eyes dark with concern. They've called for a meeting of the council. They're demanding that you present the child to prove his legitimacy. Keleth looked down at her son, who had now fallen asleep in her arms. They think they can stop him? No one can. Stop him, Darius replied, his voice filled with a quiet confidence. No one can stop us. Council chamber was packed. The elite of the Valyri Empire, the faces of power, stood watching Keleth as she entered the room. Her eyes were cold, filled with suspicion, distrust, and fear. Keleth stepped forward, holding her son carefully in her arms. Darius stood behind her, his presence a shield. He wasn't just guarding her anymore. He was guarding the future. An elder counselor stood. His voice was heavy with contempt. You return after all these years with this This child. You expect us to? Bow to him? To acknowledge him as heir? Keleth's eyes were calm, but her words were a storm. This child is not just a product of your politics. He is the future of both our peoples. We have the power to either destroy each other or build something new. And the counselors exchanged looks, their skepticism thick in the air. Young counselor rose, his voice shaking with anger. This is madness. The child is an abomination. He will never be accepted. Keleth's gaze turned cold. Then you will die in your pride. Your fear will be your downfall. But I will not let this child grow up in the ashes of your mistakes. As Keleth spoke, the door to the council chamber opened. Outside, thousands had gathered. The streets were filled with protesters, some for her, some against. But they were all waiting for her to make a choice. The Valerie Empire had been divided for too long. This was the moment that would decide whether the child would live or die, whether the future would be one of peace or war. Keleth looked down at her son, his tiny hand grasping her finger. Let them come, she said softly. They will see what happens when two worlds collide and create something greater than what came before. The council remained silent, their faces a mixture of fear and disbelief. Keleth's words had struck deep into their hearts. Finally, an elder counselor spoke. His voice was reluctant. You speak of peace, but peace requires sacrifice. Are you willing to sacrifice, Keleth? Keleth looked up at him, her eyes fierce. I will sacrifice everything for my son, for the future. And in that moment, the child in her arms stirred. The child was more than a symbol. He was a promise, Promise of unity, promise of strength. The future had been born, and there was no turning back.